leadership, and we are organizing a lot of program related to energy. And today's lecture by Dr. Biniwale is also part of that. So Dr. Biniwale's introduction will be given by Mr. Dr. Pramod Deshpande, and he will also give expert comments, and then our president, Mr. Yashwant Garpure, will propose vote of thanks. Without spending much time, I will request Dr. Pramod Deshpande to introduce the speaker.
Good morning. About today's session, the hydrogen is going to be a future or a source of energy, which is a sustainable source of energy. One of the important aspects of hydrogen handling is its supply chain of hydrogen. Today's lecture is related to efficient hydrogen storage system, so that what are the disadvantages of temperature, pressure, how it can be handled, and what kind of technology has been developed by Dr. Rajesh Biniwale. He will be giving the highlights of those technology and its pros and cons. Dr. Biniwale is a researcher. He is an academician. He has done his PhD, DSc in Hokkaido University, Japan. He has already done postdoctoral research in Tokyo University, Japan. He has a lot of credentials to his credit, and some of them are his 25 years experience. He has published more than 80. He has conducted more than 80 training. He has published more than 55 research papers. Presently, he is working in NIRI as a senior principal scientist. In addition to that, he is a member of National Technical Advisory Committee, Swachh Bharat Mission, member of Circular Economy in Municipal Solid Liquid Waste, Niti Aayog. He is a former member of Hydrogen Roadmap Committee, Eminari, former member of State Expert Appraisal Committee of Environmental Board, and so on and so forth. He has already formed he is a founder director of Ecologic Science and Technique India Private Limited. So if you take any field of research, technology development, or policy decisions, Dr. Rajesh Biniwale is there. Now, with this introduction and this guideline, I request Rajesh to start his presentation. Welcome, Rajesh.
Dr. Deshpande.
Yeah. Can you make F5?
Thank you, Dr. Deshpande. I hope
your screen is not full screen. Can you make it F5, Rajesh?
Yeah, that I will do. That I will do.
Okay,
Don't worry. I will just.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Deshpande, and thank you, TTA, to give this opportunity to speak to you about the technology which we have been working since past almost more than 1.5 decades. And this is the technology which would be. It's not the only technology which will be useful, but definitely one of the technology which India is looking forward. And not only the India, it is the worldwide. We will need these technologies, and already there are some interest being generated in the country as well as outside. Now, since this platform is Technology Transfer Association platform, and the people are quite aware, I'm not wasting time in a lot of introduction. But the hydrogen is a fuel which is a clean fuel. We started with all carbon, that means coal, and then we shifted to hydrocarbons, which is liquid hydrocarbons such as crude oil, and which we still use as a refined crude oil as a gasoline and the diesel. Beyond that, we have started cleaning our fuel, reducing the carbon, increasing the hydrogen, and therefore methane came into the picture. And methane, when compressed, because methane gets out as a natural gas when you are doing the oil exploration and other things. So this gas is being compressed, and that is what is called as CNG. A CNG is nothing but the methane, 1 carbon and 4 hydrogen. So starting from the all carbon, so you move to a ratio where 4:1 is the hydrogen to carbon ratio in the fuel. Now, further down the line, it is going to the carbon going to be completely vanished and it's going to be the hydrogen only. Because hydrogen is a clean fuel, when it burns, it does not produce any pollutants. It produces water. That's the only outcome which can come from the hydrogen. But there are issues. There are issues. It is not that straightforward. And the issues are hydrogen is a highly flammable gas. Its flammability limits are 4% to 74% volume by volume in air. That means at any concentration, hydrogen can ignite. And the second important aspect of the hydrogen safety is the auto ignition energy required for the ignition of the hydrogen is very minuscule. It's 2 millijoules only. And therefore, it's a very flammable gas, and handling this gas is going to be a difficult story. Now, just to give some background, we are trying to move from fossil fuels to hydrogen economy and the fuel cell commercialization for various aspects. That's the goal entire country is following. Background, you're seeing a lot of cars because it is thought that the first thing which it has to address is the transportation sector. And the transportation sector, because is very important worldwide. However, there are certain kind of limitations for use of hydrogen into transportation sector straight away. And these are related to the ecosystem which is available. And it is as it has always been. Whenever the transportation sector has started seeing some efficiency improvement,
You speak a little louder.
Yeah, okay. It has been always an issue when kind of just give me a second. I'll just try to see that why my speaker is audio settings, anything is wrong. Let me check.
तुला ऐकायचं आहे का? तुला ऐकायचं आहे? बरोबर वाटतं का?
No, volume is okay.
No, now I'll just make it sure. I increase the volume of microphone. Now it is fine.
Okay, this is better.
This is better, right? So what I was trying to explain was the fossil fuel to hydrogen economy. When we move, a lot of emphasis was put on the transportation sector, but it is always transportation sector has always experienced that there is always a supply and gap between the technology and the requirement of the sector. And this has always been chased. Technology has always been ahead, but at the same time, what we need was what was needing all the time was whenever we have seen the unleaded gasoline or desulfurization of fuel and everything, a lot of investment is required in this sector. So that's the same thing is going to be the story for hydrogen economy. What I'm explaining in this is there are 4 pillars on which this fossil fuel economy would convert to the hydrogen economy, and which are required, which are like hydrogen generation, delivery to the station, onboard storage, and hydrogen utilization. For the transportation sector. I will also speak about other sectors as well. Hydrogen generation is currently from the fossil fuel only. It is coming from the refineries. The alternatives are it can be taken from chloroalkyl industries where it is a waste. And the next alternative is splitting of water. And the splitting of water still is not very economical, not viable due to the low efficiencies and the energy requirement which is higher over there. So hydrogen generation is today by steam methane reforming. Onboard storage, there are a lot of options given for the onboard storage, right from the high pressure cylinders to something like metal hydrides, carbon nanotubes, and so and so. Hydrogen utilization, this is a much matured field as of today, where the fuel cells are quite at a mature technology level. Proton exchange fuel cells are quite matured, and therefore this sector. Our focus is on the delivery to the station, point A to point B. How are you going to take the hydrogen? Okay, so the slide is not changing. It's just changing now. Okay, this is hydrogen storage. Now I am focusing on the hydrogen storage only, and there are various options on the hydrogen storage. One is carbon nanostructures. Let it be carbon nanotube or let it be other carbon nanostructures. What is important in hydrogen storage is we need to have a reversible hydrogen storage. That means material should take the hydrogen and it should release also very quickly with taking a very limited amount of energy. If that doesn't happen, then it is not useful material. So the carbon nanotubes are reversible, but too cold means it requires typically low temperatures to absorb hydrogen on the carbon nanotubes. Metal hydrides reversible, but too heavy and expensive. Their weight itself is very high, and I will explain what is the implications of it. Metal organic frameworks, again, same as the carbon nanostructures. Then there is the other side where the complex chemical hydrides are there, metal clusters are there, and the nanostructure materials which are also existing over there. Uh, every alternative of this hydrogen storage has got some advantages and some disadvantages. And typical disadvantage, which I'm going to explain in the next slide, is this. What is important is you have to have a high weight percent capacity of a hydrogen as well as high volumetric capacity of the hydrogen. So if you plot X on the x-axis of weight capacity in terms of weight percentage and the volume capacity in terms of kg of hydrogen can be stored per meter cube of the volume of the storage, then this is what is the scenario which emerges out. Many of these options are either good on the x-axis or good on the y-axis, but none travels into the 45 degrees angle, which is most desired. And this is the goal which is given by Department of Energy USA, which was 6 weight percent minimum of the hydrogen capacity on weight percent and 62 kg per meter cube of or 60 kg per meter cube of hydrogen on the volumetric. However, this goal initially was given in 2009 and has been revised downwards because nobody could reach this goal. And it was revised downward in 2015 to 5, which is not shown here, to 5 on the weight percent basis and to something like 45 on the volumetric basis. So this goal has been revised. Whereas the organic hydrides means these are the compounds which are called cycloalkane compounds. These are the cyclic compounds in chemistry, quite known compounds. And these compounds, like something like cyclohexane or decalene or methyl cyclohexane, I'll give you the names. These compounds have the better capacity as compared to even earlier TOE goal of hydrogen storage, both on gravimetric and volumetric capacity. So this is what is the potential, and therefore it is we thought that it is best to explore these compounds and find out what can be done. Now the concept, what we did. This is the concept. I'm giving just one example here, one example of the reaction. We will see what others are, other examples of the reactions. Here is the hydrogen production at the centralized facility. And if you give this hydrogen for a hydrogenation reaction, where you have a toluene as an aromatic compound, which is reacting with the hydrogen and using some kind of hydrogenation catalyst, gets converted into methyl cyclohexane. This compound is a methyl cyclohexane, which is a cyclic ring and having a one methyl group atom attached to it. Now it requires a 200 degrees centigrade of the temperature. Somebody might think that the 200 degrees centigrade is a very large temperature, but trust me, in chemical reactions, these temperatures are very manageable and these are very much possible. And I will give the energy balance also, what kind of the things. We published this literature in 2005, explaining this concept in 2 papers, consecutively 2 papers in catalysis letters. The best part of this methyl cyclohexane is it takes 3 moles of the hydrogens. So 1 mole of methyl cyclohexane is taking 3 moles of hydrogen. That's the hydrogen capacity. Second is it is having the perfectly all physicochemical properties as same as the gasoline. Its boiling temperature is something like 80 degrees centigrade, and then Reid vapor pressure and other capacity. So it is actually liquid at ambient temperature and the pressure. And therefore, it can be easily transported using the lorry structures which are currently transporting your gasoline and near ambient condition. So what we have removed is the requirement of the high pressure, which otherwise would have been if the cylinders are used, and requirement of cryogenic temperatures if you would have used the liquid hydrogen, which is commonly used in the space research and the space fuel. But both are not existing here. So it is a near ambient condition you can transport, or in fact, ambient conditions you can transport methyl cyclohexane. The one more important point which has been also removed is the pipeline requirement, because always for a long-term transportation, pipelines are one of the options. And for hydrogen, it is very difficult because it's a highly inflammable gas. We will compare this in downward slide somewhere. But that has also been removed. So you don't need any infrastructure investment per se for transportation of hydrogen. When this methyl cyclohexane reaches to the fueling station, this reverse reaction can occur. This is called dehydrogenation reaction. And this reaction we have perfected in such a way, the catalyst has been perfected in such a way, not only the efficiency of the catalyst, but also the selectivity of the catalyst. So we could convert this back into toluene and hydrogen. And there is no other byproduct is formed. This is the complete reaction which is occurring. The efficiencies are up to 98% plus, and therefore you recover most of the hydrogen here. And this hydrogen is its in purest form, which is the utmost important requirement for using it into proton exchange membrane fuel cell, PEM fuel cells. Because PEM fuel cell cannot accept any impurities, otherwise they will die very immediately, their efficiencies will go down immediately. And this hydrogen, that requirement is 99.99% pure hydrogen. And we always say that you can add another line 9 after decimal, that means 99.999% purity if you want, that can be obtained by this particular aspect. The toluene, which can go back as this cylinder with back to the reaction to bring more hydrogen, or alternatively, it can be aromatics as a solvent to the industries around. You can imagine this truck as instead of filled with air, filled with something like methyl cyclohexane or a toluene. You can call it toluene filled trucks are used for this particular transportation. These are some of the candidate reactions. One reaction I have explained, methyl cyclohexane and toluene aromatization of methyl cyclohexane. There are many cyclohexane, decalene, piperidine. There are many of them. The best part of it, the kind of energy which you can get out of dehydrogenation is about 200 kilojoule per mole to 300 kilojoule per mole, or 400 even in some cases. But the dehydrogenation energy required is something low. So what do you now the challenge is it's not that green. It's not that green in terms of being like a very affordable technology and very efficient technology. It has its intrinsic problems also. This reaction as such is having some problems, and removing those problems has led to a technology. This reaction is highly endothermic reaction. There's a high activation energy is required, and liquid reactants contact between the reactants and the solid catalyst is a challenge. And therefore, this is not that straightforward usable reaction or the chemicals for the hydrogen storage and supply. And still we believe that we can remove these challenges, and we can probably make sure that this is going to be the technology. How we did, let's understand this. Okay, but before going to there, the one more point is we selected finally 2 candidates and finally settled on the methyl cyclohexane, because when we use the cyclohexane, it was aromatized to benzene, and benzene is a carcinogenic compound which is being removed from various fuels now, and therefore it is not too good to use benzene anymore, and therefore we removed it. Here is the table of basic properties. As I said, cyclohexane was 80 degrees centigrade as the boiling point. Methyl cyclohexane is around 101, and it has got 6.1% of the hydrogen can be stored. I'll explain you further down the line. So the first thing, if you remember, this is an endothermic reaction, and then the liquid reactants contact with since a liquid reactant, the contact between the liquid reactant and the solid is catalyst is a challenging thing, and high activation energy. So how do we remove this? We use the catalyst. We use the catalyst for reducing the activation energy, and we use a very specialized spray pulse reactor to create unsteady state conditions on the surface. And how we did that, I will explain you. Because this is an endothermic reaction, it is very important to have unsteady state conditions on the catalyst surface, which will make sure that you will always have the temperatures which are required, and you will always have the energy to be transported which is required. Say, for example, what we did was we have a spray pulse nozzle which has atomized the fuel which is getting injected, and we have done this on the platinum supported on the carbon as the catalyst. And what is happening is when the liquid droplet comes and sits on the catalyst surface, it gets evaporated over here. Okay, and how do we manage this evaporation? That we'll show you. Simple, if you use the conversion of a liquid to the gas, it is 135 times volume expansion, and it purges out, forming a very dense vapor phase in the very close vicinity of the catalyst, which improves the surface. How? Let's see in the some of the next slides. I think I have missed including that slide, but nevertheless, I can explain it here. Okay, okay, I missed that slide to be included, but anyhow, I'll explain it here only. So what we did was we allowed this spray to be sprayed on the catalyst surface intermittently, not a continuous spray. So we have a pulsed spray reaction. So whenever the atomized spray was given, it was pulsed. So you have in between a time for this purge to occur, this reaction to occur, and then the products and the unreacted reactant to remove from the surface, and therefore cleaning the surface all the time, and therefore maintaining the high temperature of the catalyst. So you have the high temperature of the catalyst, you have the high concentration of the reactants, and you have a immediate removal of the products, which actually shift the equilibrium. So this is kind of a complete reaction setup which we used, and this was also monitored through an IR camera, which was another aspect which we added because we wanted to optimize the catalyst conditions and other things. So don't worry about too much of a complication of this, but just to remember, this was a complete reactor design and the concepts which we developed, which we used similar similar components such as this nozzle, which is used as a fuel injection nozzle, which is used in the gasoline or the diesel, or particularly gasoline. The fuel pump is also used as the same fuel pump which is used in the automobiles, and rest of the things are very much available in the market. So the reactor is a complicated, but making this reactor is very much available. The components are very much available. This slide which we are showing that how the temperatures which we monitored, that at a very pulse, when the pulse arrived at a 00 second, till the 6 seconds, how much, how the surface gets clean. And if you look at this yellow portion, which is getting reduced, and the whiter portion getting increased, which actually translates to this. This means A to F, if you are looking these graphs, this is the increase in the temperature after the pulse has arrived. Pulse has arrived, the temperature goes down. Once the pulse arrived and the reaction starts, and there is an intermittent gap between the two pulses, which is managed by the pulse injection frequency, and therefore you have the average temperature increase from 228 when the pulse arrived to 253 when the 6 seconds are passed on. So you always get back your temperature because the catalyst temperature gets down by 25 30 degrees centigrade here and there, and that has to be bring back again. Otherwise, this reaction would not be efficient. And this is what is the exactly unsteady steady state conditions we have created. Those are having the chemical engineering or mechanical engineering backgrounds, they will understand the importance of unsteady state condition creation, and successfully we could create this. Also the catalyst design. Now the catalyst design, I'm not going to give you a lot of data, but I'm going to give you what are the strategies which we have used. We have used the bimetallic catalyst. What has been done is, we understood that when the reaction is occurring, say for example, this is methyl cyclohexane coming on the catalyst surface, which is in the box at the top on the right side, and it is getting, the hydrogen atom is getting abstracted on the catalyst, and it is forming molecular hydrogen and getting away. The reverse reaction is a rate determining step reaction, and therefore what we did was we added another catalyst, a platinum, small amount of platinum, because platinum has got a capacity to remove this hydrogen which is abstracted on the catalyst surface very quickly and form the molecular hydrogen and let it away go as a gas. What we are doing is we are removing one of the product, and therefore reverse reaction is not possible. While doing so, there is a proton exchange and electron exchange, and therefore this catalyst is also getting in a very efficient way can get remove of the remaining component of this cyclic compound, which is now aromatic compound, is getting removed. And while doing so, it keeps the catalyst into zero valence state, which is very active state of the catalyst. So this is the catalyst design strategy which we have used. And for having this interaction, electronic interaction between two metals on the catalyst surface, what is required is the closed interaction among the metals. How we achieved this? We achieved this by using uniform distribution in the metal nanocarbon nanoclusters, having two metals very closely interacting with electronic interaction range, and also something like core and shell kind of structures for the catalyst. We have synthesized this catalyst in our lab and characterize it, evaluate it, and so on. So these are some of the results on nickel platinum based catalyst. We have got into very much details of the catalyst, but I'm not going to explain you. Just only one graph I'm going to explain you here is, you can look at the three curves on the right hand side. The top figure, synergistic effect. Synergistic effect is what I'm going to explain over here is, if you use the only nickel 20%, this is what is the hydrogen production rate. If you use the platinum, this is what is the hydrogen production rate. But if you have a nickel 20% and the platinum 0.5% as just a promoter, this is what is hydrogen production rate, which is not only higher than the summation of these two, which means the synergistic effect, also but a very steady hydrogen production rate rather than decreasing hydrogen production. That means the catalyst stability was also very good. I'm not going into the details of further characterizations, but this is what this is the reactor setup which we use, which is again I am explaining over here. In the photograph, you can see the same reactor setup, and what we achieved here is 958 or almost 1000 millimole per minute per gram of the catalyst as a hydrogen production rate on our catalyst. This is what is compared to the best reported in the literature at that time was 135 millimoles per minute per gram of the catalyst. So you can imagine what is the improvement which we could bring. And even in the laboratory, we tested the stability up to 500 hours, and the cost of the catalyst was reduced to 40% by 40% as compared to only platinum catalyst. Further down the line, what we did was we optimized our reactor by using the mathematical modeling. And what we did was we combined three models. One is the reaction model, another is the kinetic model, and the droplet dynamics model, which we have combined together and created our own mathematical model for modifying the reactor. And therefore, what we could do is, these are some of the improvements. I'm not again going into the detail, but the nozzle and the catalyst distance and the angle of the spray, which we manage, and we could see that this is like a high efficiency when we created certain conditions, even in the reactor design. So this is what we have. This is a model validation on the left-hand side. That's experimental and the predicted, where we developed the model, validated our model, and using that model, we have modified the reactor designs, and that is what we could achieve as an improvement in this. So we started with the kind of a concept. Then we have converted that concept into identifying its gap for the target, the kind of challenges which are there. And the challenges we started removing one by one. So the activation energy, we started saying that we will have a catalyst. Then the endothermic reaction being handled by the unsteady state reaction, which we modified by having a good kind of reactor design as well as catalyst design strategies. And therefore, we could manage to have a very efficient manner of conducting this reaction under particular unsteady state repulse reactor on bimetallic catalyst, and that is what is achieved. Now, what is the current status? Further down the line from that reactor, a small reactor where one nozzle was there, now we have moved to a prototype which is ready for the hydrogen delivery, at the rate of something like 1 normal meter cube per hour. Which is required for converting into 1 kilowatt hour, 1 kilowatt fuel cell stack. So this is a feed to the 1 kilowatt fuel stack, and we have integrated that 1 kilowatt fuel stack into our system. Fuel cell stack we have taken from off the shelf. It is not made by us. It is from market, whereas other technological components from us. What we did further down the line using our reactor modeling, which we have modified this reactor in a very efficient way, very small amount, very small increase into the volume of the reactor, but increasing the spray pulse nozzle. You are seeing only 8 nozzles here, similar 8 nozzles on the other side of the photograph, and therefore it is something like 16 nozzles together spraying at a time, kind of a spray pulse reactor. And the dynamics of this spray has been also managed to continuously make the catalyst in the heated condition, and the temperatures are best suited for the reactions. We have achieved 6 to 8 weight%. We are using this, but what we have achieved is today is a 6 weight% of the hydrogen, and on the weight basis, and the 60 kg per meter cube of hydrogen as volumetric storage. And as I said, it's a very, very pure hydrogen, therefore quite suited for PM fuel cell. Although we have developed this, and our target is to 100 normal meter cube per hour of reactors, but that would be useful for the fueling stations for the hydrogen fuel cell cars. Today, they are not existing on the road, and therefore we are saying that the immediate application is for the uninterrupted power supply to the telecom towers, because we can reach to the remote places by using the lorry structures for this kind of hydrogen supply. And this kind of test rig, which is ready at our location, is now ready for the testings on with the telecom tower. We are already talking to the industries. Further down the line, some feasibility studies, because technology going from lab to land, it has to have some technological developments, as well as some aspects which are in the field has to be examined. So what we have examined is we have created the entire process integration. So once we perfected the reaction, once we perfected the reactor, what we started developing is entire process, because this reactor requires a feed. These reactors, after that we have to have a condensation for separation of the product, and then condensations also might not be very good at upscaling, and therefore you need to require the phase separations as well. And so you start putting some other penalties of the energy, and how are they? So we have done the energy and the mass balance on the complete integrated reactor, integrated system. And what you are seeing this as a box, which is as a rig mounted box, is actually having the entire process completed into the system. It's not only this reactor, it's all entire other process components are included in this. So the process integration or the process development was another part which we dealt with. Then we have also find out what are the energy requirements and how. So the calculation of the energy consumption during the process of entire thing, and what is the energy production by hydrogen, which is made available through liquid organic hydride, that shortly we call it LOH. If we compare this, then without considering the energy requirement for the compressor, why we are saying so? Because once you get the hydrogen, if you want to refill it into the vehicles, it has to be a compressed hydrogen. And it will be compressed for any method by which you generate the hydrogen or you supply the hydrogen to the fueling station. And therefore, we are excluding for the first phase is this compressor energy. And if you see that it is 4.36% is the ratio of energy generated by this hydrogen by the energy consumed into the entire process of bringing this hydrogen. That simply means that you have less than 25% of the penalty of the energy on the entire system whenever we have gone for the complete process development as well. And even if you consider the compressor energy, it is still close to this ratio is still close to the 4, that is 3.9. So this is a point which is making sure that this is energy efficient system. Because if we have not given the comparison of energy efficient system, energy efficiencies for other system, but if you consider that the cryogenic temperatures of -70, -100, or pressures of 500 bar, which has to be there for the systems, or even the 50 bars in case of the pipelines, these are not big energies requirement, because other energy requirements are too high, and therefore this is an energy efficient system. Now, always we have to compare on the two aspects. One is carbon footprint, because when you say you are using energy, it does means that you are emitting carbon, some other form of a carbon, because even if you are saying that we will use the solar energy via PV, photovoltaic, The photovoltaic cell production is not a clean production. It do have the carbon emissions at the manufacturing stage, and it's the dirtiest process as such which is there. So even if that dirtiest process which is there, you have to count for carbon footprint of the system. So uh, when we are saying we are using energy for heating the kind of catalyst, we need to worry about this particular situation. And therefore, we have calculated what kind of hydrogen, if you supply the hydrogen, what kind of carbon emissions would be there. And this has been compared with when you are saying that we have to use as a fossil fuels. So the annual saving in the carbon footprint, assuming the total distance traveled for the transport once about 300 kilometer, and the mileage of a fuel car about 73 miles per kg, because the car which is moving is on the hydrogen will give you 73 or 70 miles per kg of hydrogen, and you can store up to 5 kg of hydrogen on a car, given the capacities of the storage as on today available for onboard storage. Okay, so based on this kind of calculations, when we calculated the CO2 that can be saved, that is kg per year, is almost like 345,000. That means 3,45,000 kgs of CO2 can be stored. 345 tons of CO2 can be saved per year. This is a huge saving on the carbon footprint, and therefore this technology, this technology is enabling this carbon reduction by enabling the hydrogen usage into the fuel cell car by transporting hydrogen from point A to point B, and the distance between point A and point B can be anything. It could be several kilometers to few hundred kilometers. So this is what is important that we can know. We also examined on the life cycle analysis of LOH, because today is the area where you have to examine on the life cycle analysis. And those who are not from the field of life cycle analysis, let me explain in a very brief what is life cycle analysis. Life cycle analysis is an analysis of all emissions which are coming out from any process which is starting from cradle to grave. That means if you compare it with the steel, for example, just detour for a second, if you are looking at a steel, then the iron ore to the disposal of a steel scrap, whatever the processes are going on, and if there are any emissions occurring, let it be liquid, gas, or the solids, they are all quantified. And that is what is called the life cycle analysis of a particular, in this particular case, it's a steel. In our case, we have done it for liquid organic hydride. Why it is important? And there are some methodologies which says that there are 10 defined parameters of life cycle analysis. These impact parameters are something like which is called as greenhouse gas potential, acid rain potential, ozone depletion potential, and so and so. There are 10 parameters. These parameters can compare different technologies on the same denominator, and therefore can examine whether this is really environmentally benign technology or not. So what we did is we compared this liquid organic hydride with the compressed hydrogen as well as liquid hydrogen transport. And why we did this so? Because the compressed hydrogen and the liquid hydrogen, these are the two prevailing technologies as of today, which are being commercially, which are being used, and which are being said that it will be commercially available soon. In some cases, they are more or less commercial now, but not available in the masses. So what we did was, this is the complete cycle which we take. This is the system boundaries which we have understood. The complete hydrogenation and dehydrogenation reaction and the transportations both way are included, as well as we included energy inputs for the hydrogen, as well as hydrogen to the customer. So we did the mass flow and then energy flow and then the emissions out. And this is all analyzed through using standard methodology of life cycle. And this is what are the results are. If you compare, this triangular one is a gaseous hydrogen. This one is your liquid hydrogen, and this is the LOH. and particularly about 195 miles onwards, which is compared to the gaseous hydrogen. LOH is more or less compared to the CO2 emission equivalent. I'm just giving one parameter of CO2 equivalent, which is almost comparable or slightly more in case of lesser temperature, lesser distances between point A and point B. But what we analyzed is, if you have to transport it above 195 miles, this is one of the best technology. Why we are expressing in a miles? Because we published this literature, we published this paper into American Journal, where miles, they ask us to convert into the miles. We were in the kilometers. Okay, so this is almost like if you translate whatever the kilometer numbers which is coming, so higher is the distance, better is this technology to be used for environmental benign purpose, and therefore this is kind of the good technology. The liquid hydrogen transportation nowhere competes. It has got the too high energy requirement and therefore too high emissions, and therefore the comparison can only be with the gaseous hydrogen and the LOH hydrogen. This means that the methodology of supply of this hydrogen. We have also analyzed what are the kind of the sub processes: hydrogenation, transportation, dehydrogenation, and separations. And we still further targeted this to minimize the energy in the separation, because the separation was taking the maximum energy count on our side, and therefore we wanted this to be reduced. And this we have also addressed in some or other way now, which is not the part of today's presentation, but that also we have. So what we started looking at it, the critical bottlenecks in our own processes also, or the scope of improvement which is still there in the processes, and still improve it and such that we will be competitive all the time. While doing every development, what is important is protecting the IPR, and this is the IPR protected. We have done the PCT, that means we have 140 countries which are having the priority and which we have protected ourselves. We have a granted United States patents, we have granted European patents, and European patents in the 7 countries granted one. And 140 countries we have protected ourselves through PCT. Of course, Indian patent is also there, which is not seen here in this one. And it's Indian patent grant is also granted. So we all have the granted patents with us. Now, these are the 2 applications which we are targeting. One is, this is the ultimate application, hydrogen supply to the hydrogen fueling station. This cartoon depicts the kind of hydrogen fueling station would look like. And the small red box over here at the back of the side is going to be our technology, which is basis of 300 cars fueled with a 5 kg of hydrogen to each. And therefore, these are the calculations. These calculations are slightly older calculations, but what we are now looking at is 110 rupees or 150 rupees per kg of the hydrogen. We are reducing the cost there also, because we are reducing the energy requirement here. Another application is the telecom towers to provide uninterrupted power supply. Most of the telecom towers do not get the power supply continuously. This pie chart which you are seeing, they are either 6 hours to 16 hours, the power outage to the telecom towers, which are 4 lakhs in number approximately. And therefore, this is a good market potential over here. And we can immediately go in this particular aspect. This is when we compare our technology, our technology is compared for hydrogen supply from point A to point B. I am repeatedly telling, and the comparison with the technologies such as hydrogen pipeline, compressed hydrogen, and the liquid hydrogen. These are the 3 technologies to which we are competing. This is a kind of the cost comparison which we did. This is a very rough one, so don't need to go into this. But pipeline is very expensive. On-site reformer also we compared here. They are also expensive, whereas we are quite lower. And definitely the transportation distance does not matter to us. Thank you very much. I will stop here. And thanks to the support which has been given by MNRE, Department of Science and Technology, Council of Scientific Industrial Research, Japan Society for Promotion of Science, and nevertheless, and most important, is my guide, Professor Masaru Ichikawa of Hokkaido University, Sapporo, who taught me a lot of lessons on the catalysis and on the dehydrogenation reactions. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening me patiently. And I hope I have not exceeded my time limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh Beniwale, for wonderful analysis today. and it's really complex. You have explained very in easy language. We all appreciate and we thank on behalf of Technology Transfer Association. We have two announcements to make. First announcement, Mr. Dr. Pramod Deshpande will give his expert comments. Then our treasurer, Mr. Vasant Shinde, will make an announcement. And then our president, Mr. Yashwant Gharpure, will propose vote of thanks. So I request, before we go for question and answer, request Dr. Pramod Deshpande to propose, rather make expert comments. Are you there?
Okay. Thanks to all members for joining this wonderful. Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. For joining this very technologically driven development and present system of transportation of hydrogen. Yes, there is existing conventional methods of hydrogen transportation, and it also consumes a lot of energy. And Dr. Biniwale has already analyzed the energy requirement on transportation and explained how it is competitive. The second issue is that hydrogen can be produced by different sources, but transportation of hydrogen to the place will be always a certain threat. And from that perspective, with this kind of technology, there could be a different application. There may be a possibility that hydrogen can be transported in bulk through pipeline, and the pipeline may have certain stations at the inlet and outlet for absorption and desorption of the hydrogen, which generally nowadays taking place in case of LNG, that is liquefied natural gas. So it's a time, we can't say anything. You cannot conclude. I thank Rajesh for giving excellent and very knowledgeable presentation on this platform. Now you can go ahead for the.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pramod Deshpande, for a short sum up. Yes, definitely. On Technology Transfer Association's behalf, we had been to Japan and Korea in October 2019 just to study what EV technologies are emerging. Korea, we found a lot of activities happening, but in Japan, when we went to Japan Motor Show, we could hardly see EV activities, but most of the major companies were working on hybrid, and that is also hydrogen vehicle. I understand our hydrogen policy, nation's hydrogen policy was created in 2008 and it is revised in 2016. And I'm sure the kind of efforts happening in the country will definitely lead us to this alternate fuel. I think now appropriate presentation may be on fuel cells. I understand Dr. Lele from National Chemical Laboratory is working on fuel cell development. I think he left and joined Reliance and now come back as a director NCL. So we can always request him to give presentation on fuel cell and the development in the country. So that's sure. I will request our treasurer, Mr. Vasant Shinde, to make the announcement.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Vasant Shinde.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. We had a very good session. Hydrogen and its transport and risk and timely requirement for the entire global scenario. Now, only one announcement as usual on Sunday. This lecture meets. There are several participants probably joining first time this technology lectures. The association is a registered and charitable institution, and we have got a very wide network. So I request everyone who has joined recently or today only to become a live member of this association and help in disseminating this knowledge and all on behalf of this Technology Association, Pune. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shinde. And now I will request our president, Mr. Yashwant Gharpure, to propose vote of thanks.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible.
At the outset,
There is no
I must
session.
compliment Dr. Rajesh for a highly research-oriented, carried out efficiently, verse presentation in a language which even a layman can understand. And this speaks for his name. That is, Raj means king and Shesh means ruler. So you are ruler of king, and that king happens to be nitrogen. And I'm sure you will be able to manage with in your kingdom with the dedication with which you are carrying out your work. I compliment also Dr. Deshpande because initially he had an idea of green energy, but gradually he is now focusing on some areas. And last time we had a lecture. At that time, some people asked me the next lecture, transportation, is it important? I said, yes, it is important because hydrogen is not a easy fuel to transport. And in that context, rightly so, this lecture has been arranged. It has certainly enlightened us of the hydrogen and the problems that are faced while transporting it. One of the problems with hydrogen is that low energy density, and that is where he has tried to find a solution to this problem. He had also highlighted that 300 miles, 5 kg hydrogen is required. It has to be at 700 bar pressure, and the volume of the container will be 200 liters, which is 3 times the volume of a normal conventional petrol vehicle fuel tank. So I think the third lecture, Deshpande Sahib, you might have to arrange as to how to address this problem of the transportation of hydrogen in the EV and the challenges that it faces of in terms of weight, volume, efficiency, safety, low cost. Safety particularly because unlike all gases which cool on expansion, hydrogen heats on expansion. And I know this because I was in charge of a aniline and hydrogen plant. We were reducing nitrobenzene with hydrogen. We had put up a plant given by FIDO of pressure sink absorption from naphtha and generating hydrogen. And we found that this particular phenomena, we have to take care that unlike all other gases, hydrogen heats up rather than cooling during expansion, you know. That is the reason why the 2,750 reactor that we had for aniline, the change of catalyst was a 6-week program because we have to replace the hydrogen with nitrogen. First of all, cool the reactor, then replace the hydrogen with nitrogen, with air, and then remove the two reactor and then empty the catalyst, recharge the catalyst, and again reverse. So it took 6 weeks, this process. And all that was because the hydrogen was involved, you know. So handling hydrogen is the challenge for the green technology. And I'm sure that another lecture on how the challenge of using hydrogen for the electric vehicle can be arranged. I'm sure Deshpande Sahib will be able to arrange a lecture on this subject also. At this stage, I must say that Rajesh ji is a chemical engineer, and a chemical engineer is defined as one, if there is a difficult problem, it will be solved. If it is an impossible problem, it will take little time. And that is what the EV transportation of hydrogen for EV vehicle is going to be an impossible problem, but I'm sure chemical engineers can solve this problem also. I thank this very thought-provoking lecture, Rajesh ji and Rabri ji also for maintaining our schedule very efficiently and managing it very, very diligently. And all of you who have been participating on our lecture and attending such large numbers, strengthen our hands by becoming our member and actively participate, recommend speakers who are relevant, recommend subjects which you feel are close to your to your heart, and we will try to do justice to the same. Thanks all of you once again, and thanks to the speaker and Rabdeji. Over to
Rabde
Rabde.
Thank
sir,
you.
question answer.
Yeah.
Rabde sir,
I'll
yeah.
take the question answers. Just hold it.
Sorry, we are
Let's start
reversed. We are
now.
reversed.
Please identify yourself and ask the question.